What happens when the master of precision, the one who has never slipped, never faltered, suddenly finds himself undone by the simplest, most overlooked detail? Imagine a man so skilled that vaults yield their secrets to him without a single alarm raised, without a single trace left behind. Now picture him, in the dead silence of night, standing on the edge of pulling off the impossible, only to have it all unravel in an instant. It's 3:17 a.m. inside a high-end jewelry store nestled in the heart of a city that never truly sleeps. Outside, the streets are empty, bathed in the pale glow of streetlights, but inside, time seems to have stopped. The darkness is thick, punctuated only by the gleam of polished glass cases that cradle treasures worth fortunes. Diamonds sparkle faintly even in the shadows, rubies and sapphires resting like silent sentinels. The air is cool, sterile almost, as if the very atmosphere holds its breath. In the center of this silent sanctuary, a man kneels before a vault. Known in the shadowy world of criminals as the Listener, he is a legend whispered about in hushed tones and cautious respect. His reputation is built on an uncanny ability to open safes simply by listening, to the faintest clicks, the softest tumblers shifting just so. Tonight, he is surrounded by tools arranged with the precision of a surgeon's instruments, each one purposefully placed within arm's reach. His gloved hands move with confident grace, his fingers steady as he leans closer, ear near the cold steel. Breathing slow and controlled, he tunes in to the symphony of the lock. Every tiny sound is a note in a complex melody only he can hear. The world outside fades away. There is only the lock, the tumblers, and the rhythm of his own breath. Years of practice have honed him into an artist of silence, a master whose touch leaves no mark, whose presence never triggers even the faintest whisper of an alarm. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scan the mechanism, fingers dancing lightly, coaxing the safe towards surrender. Minutes stretch like hours. The tension is palpable but contained, a taut wire ready to snap. Then, the final tumbler slips into place with a nearly imperceptible click. The door swings open, a victory so quiet, so flawless it feels like magic. The treasures within are now within reach, the culmination of a plan executed with surgical precision. The listener's lips curve into a faint, satisfied smile. All seems perfect. Then what you're about to hear might surprise you. A faint beep pierces the silence. A small, almost insignificant sound. His eyes dart up, catching a subtle glow. A tiny light blinking red from a corner of the room. The air shifts. That faint beep ignites a chain reaction. Suddenly, the room floods with harsh red lights, alarms erupting in a cacophony that shatters the stillness. The symphony of silence is replaced by chaos. In that instant, the flawless plan crumbles. Unbeknownst to the listener, a motion sensor, basic, unassuming, utterly overlooked, had been silently scanning the space he thought he controlled. It was watching, waiting, and his tunnel vision had blinded him to its presence. The master safecracker, the man who prided himself on never making mistakes, had missed the simplest detail. Stay with me until the end, because the way this perfect plan fell apart says more about human nature than about technology. How can someone so experienced, so precise, be undone by something so basic? What does this tell us about the limits of expertise, the dangers of overconfidence, and the unpredictable cost of a single oversight? This story is not just about a heist gone wrong. It's a chilling exploration of the razor-thin line between mastery and failure, between silence and chaos. As we unravel what happened next, you'll see how even the greatest can falter, and how the smallest detail can bring down the mightiest of plans. In the shadowed underbelly of criminal lore, the name The Listener carried an almost mythic weight. Safecrackers came and went, but he was different. A man whose talent wasn't brute force or high-tech gadgetry, but an uncanny ability to decipher the invisible world of tumblers and tumbling sounds. His reputation stretched like a whisper through the darkest corners of the underworld, a whisper that said, "This is the man who could open almost any vault by sound alone." The listener wasn't born into this skill. It was forged over years of obsessive patience. He began as a locksmith's apprentice, a boy who sat with his ear pressed against metal, fascinated by the minute clicks and shifts inside locks. Time warped around those sounds, those tiny mechanical conversations. He learned to hear the subtle changes in the tumbler's dance, the faint metallic sighs that betrayed a lock's secrets. It became an auditory map, each safe a unique symphony he could read with devastating precision. Others relied on brute force or hurried manipulation, but he was a composer of silence, conducting a delicate operation where one wrong note meant disaster. His ledger of successful jobs was as varied as it was impressive. Vintage safes, their ancient mechanisms rusted but intricate, yielded smoothly under his touch. Modern reinforced vaults, armored with state-of-the-art technology, fell silent like a whispered surrender. The most challenging were the hybrid systems, those cruel machines that blended old-world craftsmanship with cutting-edge security. Yet, none resisted his ear, none secured their treasures from his patient scrutiny. He moved like a ghost through these mechanical labyrinths, never triggering alarms, never leaving a scratch or dent to hint at his presence. To the outside world, the locks remained untouched, as if they had opened themselves. But this mastery came with a personality as exacting as his craft. The listener was obsessive, a man who demanded absolute control over every variable. His world was black and white, defined by the precision of his process. He was a perfectionist in the truest sense, relentless and unyielding. Confidence spilled from him in waves, bordering on arrogance. He didn't just believe in his methods. He dismissed any contrary advice as noise, distractions from the purity of his technique. The words of partners or warnings from associates often fell on deaf ears. If it didn't fit into his meticulous system, it simply didn't exist. This confidence, however, was a double-edged sword. His faith in his own process became a blind spot, a vulnerability masked by brilliance. He trusted so deeply in the sound of tumblers, in the logic of his fingers, that he ignored anything he considered basic or beneath him. It was almost a disdain for the obvious, a refusal to double-check or reconsider when things seemed too simple. In his mind, the lock was the only puzzle worth solving. The rest of the environment, the alarms, the cameras, the human variables, were peripheral distractions, irrelevant to his singular focus. On the night he entered the high-end jewelry store, this trait was more pronounced than ever. He demanded absolute silence, forbidding any noise that might interfere with his delicate work. His gaze locked on the vault door as if it were the only thing in the room, his hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. The complicated security system that surrounded him, the pressure pads beneath the floor, the infrared beams slicing through the air, was something he barely acknowledged. His world contracted to the lock, every other element fading into the background. It was this unyielding focus, the very quality that had made him a legend, that would become his undoing. The listener's ears caught every tiny shift inside the vault, but they failed to catch what lay beyond it. The lock was his domain, but the security environment was a battlefield he had chosen to ignore. In the silence he demanded, in the precision he prized, lay the seed of failure, waiting to bloom in the moment he least expected. The crew came together around the listener like spokes radiating from a central hub. He was the core, the man who could speak the language of locks and whispers of mechanisms, the one who could turn seconds into silence. His reputation had pulled in the others, each a specialist in their own right, yet all dependent on his steady hand. There was Vega, the driver. She was lean and precise, her eyes always flicking to the clock. Timing wasn't just a skill for her, it was a discipline. Vega's role was clear. Get the team in, get the listener out, and vanish into the night without a trace. She studied routes, memorizing every turn and alley that could shave seconds off their escape. Her clean extraction plan left no room for error, and she made sure every second counted. Watching over the streets was Knox, the lookout. His position was the quiet sentinel perched in shadows or behind tinted glass. He monitored pedestrian flow, police patrols, and even the shift changes of security guards. Knox was the team's eyes beyond the store's walls, alert to any unexpected movement. His careful surveillance of the commercial district's narrow alleys and the web of CCTV cameras in nearby buildings formed their early warning system. He knew when the streets would breathe easy and when they tightened with danger. Then there was Finch, the electronics specialist. His role was murky, somewhere between hacker and electrician, a man whose fingers danced over wires and circuits with practiced ease. His responsibility was to neutralize the security sensors, or so it was agreed, yet the specifics blurred into ambiguity. The team never explicitly pinned down whether Finch was disabling all the sensors or just the external network. Even Finch himself spoke vaguely about covering the perimeter, never mentioning the inner motion detectors with certainty. It was a gap born of assumptions no one dared clarify. For weeks, they had watched the jewelry store, a gleaming fortress nestled amid glass storefronts and office buildings. The building's modern facade masked the intricate routines inside. They mapped employee schedules down to the minute. The staggered opening, the midday breaks, and especially the closing ritual when the last lights dimmed. The cleaning crew's visits proved invaluable, predictable, yet distracting enough to create small windows of lowered vigilance. Outside, the neighborhood's patrols moved like clockwork, their rotations a predictable dance. Knox's exhaustive logs revealed intervals where the streets emptied, the shadows lengthened, and the camera's blind spots aligned with the narrow alleys that threaded behind the block. The team's plan hinged on these moments, the window of opportunity when time seemed to slow and the city's watchful eyes were briefly elsewhere. Inside, the real prize was the vault. Unlike the sleek security system guarding the building, the vault was an anachronism, a massive safe of mechanical complexity and stubborn old-world craftsmanship. Its mechanism was a puzzle of tumblers and levers, requiring the delicate touch and acute hearing only the listener possessed. The vault's design was both a blessing and a curse. It demanded silence and speed, a flawless performance with no room for the slightest hesitation. The plan was simple in theory. The listener would slip past the outer defenses, bypass the cameras and alarms that Finch had assured were handled, and stand before the vault. There, in the quiet heart of the store, he would coax the safe open swiftly, unobtrusively, before the patrols circled back and the cleaning crew wrapped up their rounds. They discussed every detail. Alarms that would scream if doors were forced, cameras that scanned in arcs, and locks that clicked with caution. But as the plan took shape, a dangerous assumption took root. Finch believed any motion sensors near the vault were the listener's concern, part of the lock's delicate ecosystem that he would manage. Meanwhile, the listener assumed all such sensors were disabled by Finch before he even stepped inside. Neither took ownership of the motion detector perched just above the vault's imposing door, a silent sentinel waiting in the shadows. As the night of the heist approached, tension coiled in the listener's chest. He felt the weight of expectation, the pressure of perfection. Yet beneath it all was a quiet pride. This was his domain, his moment to prove why he was the best. "If I'm there," he reminded himself, "it can't go wrong." The certainty steadied his nerves, even as the unspoken gap in their plan loomed like a shadow. The streets had gone dark, the city's heartbeat slowing to a measured rhythm. The crew gathered in their designated spots, each ready to play their part in the silent symphony. Vega's engine idled a few blocks away, ready to spring. Knox melted into a shadowed doorway, eyes sharp and never resting. Finch's fingers hovered over a tablet, scanning for any last-minute changes in the security feed. And the listener stood at the edge of the commercial district, listening. Not just to the sounds around him, but to the quiet promise of a night that could either crown him legendary or shatter everything he had built. The plan was set, the crew in place, and the city held its breath. All that remained was to open the door. The night swallowed the city whole, folding streets and alleyways into a cloak of thick silence. The crew moved like ghosts, their breaths shallow, footsteps muffled against asphalt and concrete. Knox slipped the side service door open, its rusted hinges groaning softly but not enough to betray them, and they slipped inside. The plan hinged on darkness and precision. Finch had expertly disabled the surveillance cameras feeding the building's security room, their blinking red eyes now dead, frozen in time. Outside, the driver waited in the shadowed van, engine idling quietly, a dim glow from the dashboard his only companion. Inside, the building smelled cold and sterile, the faint hum of the ventilation system the only sound. The lookout stationed by the main entrance kept a steady vigil, eyes scanning the corridor every 30 seconds, fingers twitching near his concealed firearm. Another man lingered by the main security panel, a slim figure with sharp eyes, fingers ready to sever wires or hack codes if the unexpected happened. But tonight, the unexpected would come not from outside but from a single, overlooked corner high above the vault. The listener moved forward, his steps measured and sure, like a conductor leading an orchestra no one else could hear. The hallway narrowed, walls closing in with the weight of anticipation. He reached the vault's heavy steel door, its cold surface swallowing the weak beam of his flashlight. Darkness pressed in, thick and complete, save for the slender slit of light cast over the dial, where the tumblers waited silently. Almost invisible in the corner, angled down toward the floor, was the motion sensor. Its smooth white casing blended into the ceiling tiles, utterly unremarkable. No one had mentioned it. No one had thought to disable it. The listener's eyes flicked upward briefly, a subconscious glance, but he dismissed it. His focus locked on the dial, the tumblers, the delicate dance of clicks that could grant him access to the treasure within. His breathing slowed, each inhale deep and controlled, each exhale a whisper. Fingers traced the dial, feeling the subtle resistance, the faint vibrations beneath the metal. Click, a tumbler's alignment. Click, another. Seconds stretched like hours. The tension in the room was a taut wire pulled tight between them all, the time window closing with every heartbeat. The others remained in position, silent and alert, their roles carved out like the pieces of a puzzle. Then the faintest sound, the tumblers settling into place. The listener's hand pressed the handle, a soft metallic groan, and the vault door creaked open, an invitation to success. A quiet satisfaction bloomed inside him, warm and steady. This was the moment, the job done. But as he shifted, standing upright to step inside fully, his body passed through the invisible arc of the motion sensor's gaze. A tiny beep, almost imperceptible. A small LED blinked from green to red. And then, the silence shattered. An ear-piercing siren screamed through the vault, red strobe lights bathing the room in frantic pulses. The monitoring system sprang to life, dialing out, sending distress signals to the company and local authorities. The cold hum of the ventilation was drowned by the blaring alarm. A mechanical beast awakened. Inside the vault, chaos erupted. Voices cracked with panic and frustration. Who the hell left the motion sensor active? Knox barked, eyes wide, heart pounding. It was supposed to be disabled. Finch snapped, fingers flying over his tablet, trying to override the system, but the lockout was swift and total. The man by the main panel cursed under his breath, slamming a fist against the console. The listener froze, caught mid-step, his chest tightening. The weight of realization pressed down hard. This was his mistake. Ignoring the sensor, overlooking the simplest detail, the one thing that could have undone him. His breath hitched, the cool control he'd maintained cracking like fragile glass. Outside, the driver's phone buzzed violently, the call from the monitoring company sharp and urgent. The distant wail of sirens began to tear through the night air, growing closer with every passing second. "Get what you can now," Knox ordered, voice sharp with adrenaline. But hesitation flickered in every eye. Abandon everything and disappear into the night? Or risk it all for the haul they'd fought so hard to reach? The irony was brutal. A master of silence and subtlety undone by a tiny, unassuming device perched quietly in the corner. The world-class specialist, the listener, brought low not by a rival or a trap, but by the simplest guardian of all, the motion sensor. The moment the sensor tripped, a silent alarm pulsed through the building's security system, instantly relayed to the monitoring center miles away. In the sterile glow of computer screens, an operator's fingers danced over the keyboard, confirming the breach with a quick scan of live feeds. The alert was immediate and unequivocal. Unauthorized entry in progress at the high-end jewelry store. Within seconds, the message flashed across the police dispatch monitors, triggering a rapid, practiced response. Patrol units scattered across the precinct received the call simultaneously. They converged on the narrow streets surrounding the boutique with precision, weaving through tight alleyways and congested lanes that crisscrossed the district. Their radios crackled with coordination, officers methodically sealing off every conceivable escape route. 2 units blocked the main avenue leading to the store. Another took position at the rear alley, while others fanned out towards side streets. Surveillance cameras mounted on street corners and building facades captured every movement, relayed live to the command center. On the monitors, the telltale shadows of the crew moving inside the building flickered against walls and glass. Inside, chaos reigned in sharp contrast to the quiet efficiency outside. The crew scrambled like startled birds, glancing nervously toward the entrance and the windows. Jewelry gleamed in careless heaps on the floor. Necklaces tangled, bracelets spilled from half-filled bags abandoned in haste. Knox's voice rose above the clamor, sharp and urgent. "Grab what you can. Move." But the listener was rooted in place, torn between seizing more riches and cutting losses. His eyes flicked from the scattered loot to the imposing safe, its cold metal surface reflecting the dim light. The sensor that had undone them sat silently on the wall, still unassuming but deadly. Pride and disbelief warred within him. How could such a tiny device have betrayed them? He hesitated, fingers twitching near the safe's lock but not moving. His breath caught, heart pounding unevenly. Around him, the others began slipping toward the exit, shadows melting into the stairwell and then into the surrounding maze of streets. Knox barked a warning over his shoulder, but the listener's gaze remained fixed on the sensor, as if willing it to disappear. Outside, the flashing lights of patrol cars bathed the narrow streets in harsh blue and red. Officers moved swiftly, boots pounding on pavement, voices sharp with commands. "Police, stay where you are. Hands where we can see them." Flashlights swept over windows, catching the glint of jewelry and abandoned bags inside. The sound of keys rattling and locks turning echoed faintly as the police surrounded the building, their presence tightening like a noose. In the final moments, the listener's hesitation was his downfall. The front door burst open, and officers flooded inside, their voices booming and boots thudding on the floorboards. They found him slumped against the wall near the safe, sweat streaking his face, eyes wide and hollow. His body trembled, exhaustion and defeat etched into every line. He made no move to resist as officers cuffed him, the weight of the night crushing down. Nearby, the others were caught in the perimeter or rounded up within hours, but it was the listener who remained the centerpiece, the fallen king of the heist, undone by one overlooked sensor. As the building emptied and the flashing lights began to fade, detectives stepped in, their eyes sharp and minds already piecing together the puzzle. They would unravel how a plan so meticulously crafted collapsed in an instant, all because of a tiny, silent guardian no one had noticed. The investigation was just beginning. The scene was frozen in time, a carefully orchestrated chaos rendered inert by one overlooked element. Forensic teams swarmed the vault's antechamber, their flashlights tracing the contours of security devices that had been methodically neutralized, except one. The motion sensor stood untouched, its sleek casing unmarred, its internal mechanisms humming quietly beneath a thin layer of dust. No wires had been severed, no circuit boards tampered with. It was as if the sensor had been invisible, a ghost in the room that everyone ignored. Nearby, cameras lay disabled, their lenses cracked or covered with adhesive strips. The alarm system's control panel showed clear evidence of sabotage, codes overwritten, signals rerouted. The team's handiwork was evident in every corner but one. The detectives' meticulous notes highlighted this singular failure like a red flag against a white sheet. The motion sensor was active, alive, and watching. Interrogations began in a windowless room down the hall, voices low but tense. Each member of the team seemed eager to shift blame, their eyes darting to one another, unwilling to take responsibility for the oversight. "I handled the cameras," one claimed, finger pointing across the table. "No, I disabled the alarms." Another shot back, eyes narrowing. Conflicting stories tangled together, a web of half-truths and assumptions. None mentioned the motion sensor until the listener spoke. He sat slumped, the weight of the failure pressing down on him. When pressed, his voice cracked as he confessed, "I didn't even look at it. I was too focused on the vault." The words hung heavy in the air, a confession that shattered the fragile facade of competence. His fixation on the prize had blinded him to the basics, the silent guardian that should have been neutralized long before the team reached the vault's threshold. As the listeners' defenses crumbled, so did the illusion of flawless execution. The detectives sensed a pattern, a classic case of tunnel vision fueled by overconfidence. They had everything else locked down, one officer noted, but they missed the one sensor that would have triggered the entire alarm. It was a mistake born not of ignorance but hubris, a failure to confirm the fundamentals amid the complexity of the operation. The police report would later describe the incident as a textbook example of how the best-laid plans can unravel when discipline is sacrificed for certainty. The team operated as if their expertise alone guaranteed success, bypassing the crucial step of verification. A simple check, glancing at the sensor, testing its status, would have prevented the cascade of failure. Instead, their arrogance left them exposed. This case underscored a harsh lesson. In operations where every detail counts, confidence without rigor is fatal. Even the most skilled specialist can be undone by the very basics they assume they have mastered. The team's downfall was not a lack of ability but a failure to respect the fundamentals that underpin every secure system. As the investigation wound down, the detectives filed their reports, the echoes of that night's mistakes resonating through every page. The story was no longer about a brilliant heist foiled by fate, but a cautionary tale about the dangers of complacency. Their findings laid bare a truth that transcended this single event, a reminder that in any complex endeavor, vigilance must never waver, and no detail is too small to merit attention. This realization would set the stage for the final reflection, where the implications of that night's failure would be distilled into a lesson not just for criminals or law enforcement, but for anyone who walks the fine line between success and ruin. The silent motion sensor, unyielding and unyielded to, had spoken louder than any alarm, a testament to the unforgiving nature of oversight. It's striking how the entire carefully orchestrated plan unraveled because of one small, overlooked detail. The motion sensor left active, silent yet unyielding in its vigilance. The safecracker's expertise and precision were undeniable, yet it was a simple human error that sealed his fate. In a way, it's a reminder that no matter how meticulous we believe our plans to be, the margin for error remains, and sometimes the smallest slip brings the whole operation crashing down. That irony lingers, not as a mere twist of fate, but as a deeper reflection on how the human element persists even in the most calculated endeavors. If you followed this case closely, it's worth thinking about which moments stood out to you the most: the flawless entry, the unexpected sensor, or the final unraveling. Maybe you've come across other stories where a perfect plan fell apart because of a basic mistake, and we'd be interested to hear those too. Sharing these moments not only enriches the narrative but builds a community curious about the fragile balance between success and failure. A simple like here helps ensure that cases like this one find their way to others who appreciate the intricate dance of intelligence, error, and consequence. It supports the ongoing effort to delve deep into stories where the most seemingly secure strategies are undone by the smallest oversights. And if you want to keep exploring more cases like this, where one overlooked detail changes everything, consider subscribing. It's not just about following crimes or mysteries. It's about understanding the human stories behind them, the lessons learned, and the subtle reminders that perfection is often just one step away from collapse. Together, we keep peeling back the layers, one case at a time.